everyone, it's Matt and Yung of Real Clear English, and today we're here to discuss personal essay. And this includes college personal essays as well as grad school essays. I have a few questions now that I'm writing the essay and under your guidance. And so the whole time I'm questioning myself, will admission officers have a problem with me getting your help?
It's an interesting situation that we're in now. So 30 years ago, when people applied to university in the United States, they would spend an evening maybe on their whole application. They'd draft their essay.
Really?
Yeah, it really wasn't that big a deal.
I want to go back to that time.
That's right. Yeah, if you had a time machine, you wouldn't go back and get rich. You wouldn't predict the future. You would just go back to 1985 to get into college.
Exactly. I wouldn't want to be a Henry Ford.
No.
And be super rich.
But so nowadays, obviously your personal essays are a huge part of your application, and because so many universities are so competitive, they're a very important way for the admissions officers to get a good sense for who you are. So there's a short answer to this question and then a slightly longer one. The short answer is there are companies out there and there are people out there who will write your essays for you. Don't do that. We've seen it here in Thailand, and we've read stories about it happening elsewhere around the world. Companies that will just literally write an essay out of whole cloth on behalf of students. And not only is it unethical, and that's reason enough not to do it, people get caught. And when they get caught, they get in very big trouble. In some cases, universities will contact students' high schools, and those students can end up blackballed, not just from the university they applied to, but other universities as well. So both because it's unethical, right? It's not you writing the essay, and because it can backfire in a very big way. Don't do that.
Yeah, it's not just that school, that students, but also the whole school.
Yeah, we've seen this. There have been schools, top international schools here in Bangkok, for example, where one student has gotten caught cheating on their application to a university in the United States. And that university has basically blackballed the entire school, the entire high school. So other deserving students, other students who are working hard and applying to an elite university now had no chance because a classmate cheated on his or her application. So there's a lot of reasons not to do it, aside from the obvious one. But let's talk about the more general case, because I don't imagine you're not. I'm not writing the essay for you.
And I find that working on my essay is actually a learning process that I find utterly valuable.
Yeah, it's one of those things, like a lot of assignments in school, the admissions essay is one of those things where if you didn't have to do it, if you weren't doing it because someone was making you, it would be very easy to enjoy it, to get a lot out of it.
Yeah.
If you let it be, it's a really rewarding process.
Yeah, it's like a Dear Diary moment.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Just polished up a little bit. But a lot of people, I'd say most people, except for, the very rare professional writer, most people need feedback on their writing, and that includes feedback on their ideas and on the way they're expressing those ideas, but also on the writing itself, on the expression, on the sequence of ideas, on the grammar. There's nothing wrong with using friends or teachers or others or services like ours as a sounding board, right, for especially given what you're writing about, right? You're writing about yourself and your own dreams, your own personality, your own complexity, your own confusion, your future. These things are all murky topics, and they're hard to express clearly. So it's all the more reason, I think, to get some assistance and to have somebody there to sort of check you and coach you as you're trying to...
I see you as a coach to help me nudge myself towards expressing myself more clearly, which left to my own, I felt a bit, it's like so many blind spots. I don't know where to begin, because which part of me do I begin with that makes sense to the readers? And you are both a coach and a reader in that sense.
Yeah, well, and let me just say one more thing on that real quick, which is I think working with you has been really nice, because one thing you don't do, well, aside from the fact that you're cute, one thing that about working with you is really nice is that you don't ever do, we encounter a patch of your essay that where I think there's some question that deserves to be explored a little more fully, for example. And what you never do is say, what do I do, right? You're not turning to me and asking me to solve the problem for you. I might suggest a few possible avenues, but I won't just do the work for you. And anyone that will do the work for you is probably not the kind of person you want to work with.
Right. Question number 2. What do admissions officers look for in the essay that they cannot look for elsewhere in the application?
So if you think about an application as a sort of multifaceted view into who you are, you can then think about constructing an overall portrait of yourself. So one mistake, for example, that a lot of students make is they take their resume or their CV, and they basically just cut and paste the whole thing into an essay and then turn it into sentences. You can do that, but if you do that, you're not really providing new information or new insight into who you are. You're just repeating what the admissions people already know. The admissions essay is another opportunity to provide insight into a different side of you. Now that side of you can complement what they've seen elsewhere, what you've shared elsewhere, but it should be more, and it should be different. Think of it as if the resume is just the bullet points, what I've done, where I've been, what I've accomplished. The essay is the flesh and bones, right? It's the real, more expressive, more revealing part of your application portrait. It's the part where you show yourself as a real, full, breathing, complex human being. And that includes weaknesses. It can include difficulties you've encountered. It can include sort of ways you've sought to overcome challenges that you faced. And it doesn't all have to be designed to make you look great. One mistake that a lot of students make, I think, is that they write essays that are just nonstop self-advertisements, right? First I was president of my student class, and then I was, head of a charity that saved lots of kids' lives, and then I was a great person in my spare time, and I cooked meals for my grandma, every weekend. That can all be real, and that can all be honest, and if that's who you are and what you want to share, that can be fine. It can be great. But when it starts to feel like you don't know how to relax and acknowledge that your life is a little more complex than that, when you refuse to, reveal or allow the admissions officers to see that, right, you have moments of weakness, you have moments of imperfection, you have moments of uncertainty or confusion. When you won't do that, it becomes very hard to read the essay and take it seriously, because it doesn't feel like you're reading a real person's writing. It feels like you're reading a brochure for a potential student.
Yeah. So when I write, I find it helpful to imagine that the other person is my best friend in Australia, in Australia reading it, and she's academically and intellectually, and she's on the same par with me. So it feels like I can say to her a lot about my field, as well as feel relaxed about it in my sharing of my thoughts and my weakness, as well as my values and my motivations.
Exactly. Yeah, there's something to having a sniff test, right? A smell test. If you put your essay in front of your best friend and they kind of laugh because you're being so self-promotional, you're probably being too self-promotional. I mean, if your friend is aware, they're going to understand, hey, this is an essay for college, it's not exactly the same as a conversation we might have at a coffee shop, but there ought to be that basic level of honesty there.
Yeah, I agree, and I like it best when it's like that.
Mm.
So my last question for you is, how does language in my personal essay matter if, say, I'm a math genius who would like to major in math in college?
It's a good question. So first, it's I think right to acknowledge that, in some ways it's kind of unfair. If you're a math genius or if you're a biology fanatic, but you're not particularly good at language, you're interested in language, you're in some ways, the process is a bit unfair to you because you have to write essays, whereas the English majors, the literature majors, they don't have to do any experiments in order to get into college. That said, the standards are different, right? If it's clear that your talent and your future and your interest is in a science, for example, and you're not going to be studying literature in college, the college isn't going to evaluate your application the same way it would somebody like me, for example, who's more interested in language. So there is some allowance for, hey, this student's talents lie elsewhere and their interests lie elsewhere. That said, writing isn't just a narrow field. It's not just another field, at least in my view. What you're being asked to do is express some basic self-awareness and self-understanding, right? Now you have to do it through the medium of writing and words, but that's just how we communicate for the most part. That's how we communicate with people who are far away. So you don't have to be able to write a Nobel Prize winning novel. You don't have to write the very best essay in the applicant pool, but you do have to be able to write clearly. You do have to explain your own motivations, explain your ideas, share what you hope to accomplish and what you hope to do in the future. If you can do all that clearly and in a comprehensible and easy to follow way, like I said, it doesn't have to be poetry. Poetry helps, but if that's not your specialty, that's fine. And you're not going to be at a disadvantage. They're going to look at the skills that you have and the kind of applicant you have and compare you to other similar applicants.
Yeah, I find that writing clear English is such a good skill to have, especially for me who doesn't speak English as my mother tongue. Just being clear and not trying to be too sanctimonious about it. Is the most effective way to travel from my heart to the reader's heart.
Well, and that's, I think, the basic test that a college is applying when they read your application essays is there's a really close relationship between clear thinking and clear writing. Right? If your essay is all over the place, that's not just because you prefer biology. It might also be because you actually aren't saying anything that's well thought out, right? And this is the distinction I was trying to make a minute ago. If you know what you're trying to say, if your ideas are in a clear sequence, then your essay is already going to be pretty good, right? Again, it might not be poetic, but it will be clear, right? If it isn't clear, there's a very good chance that's because you're not exactly sure what you think or what you feel or what you're trying to share. So this standard of writing clearly and writing in a comprehensible sequence, that's relevant for everybody, not just the literature majors.
Right, I agree. So that's that. Those are my 3 questions for Matt today, and I hope you find it helpful. If you have any questions at all, don't hesitate to ask us in the comments.
Yeah, we'd be happy to answer more anytime. Thanks, everyone.
Goodbye, guys.